Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling Podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. Well, seeing how we're pulling Category 6A, the most powerful twisted pair in the world, you got to ask yourself this one question. Did I pull 295 or 300 feet? Well, do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. The elite professional, knowledgeable, and experienced in leading-edge ICT design principles. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
Eastern Standard Time. You know, that can only mean one thing. Live after hours with Chuck Bowser, RCDD, your favorite RCDD. You know I'm your favorite. Just go ahead and admit it. Just go and tell people Chuck's my favorite. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it. Let me flip back over here because I had TikTok hooked up to thing. So tonight is a question and answer session. And I got some questions that were submitted over the last couple of weeks. Oh, where am I at? First, start off with, what are you drinking? What are you drinking? You'll never be able to guess what Chuck is drinking tonight. Never be able to guess. In a million years. Goat milk. Yes. Goat milk from our farm. It's that time of the year that we are milking goats. I love it. I love goat milk too, by the way. So Kaylin is drinking sweet tea. Wire for Excellence is drinking coffee. Goat milk's really good in coffee. Just saying. Really good in coffee. So, we got to do the acronym challenge too. Let's do that acronym challenge. Get it out of the way. What is WAO? What is WAO? Yeah, while you guys are figuring that out, I'm going to take another sip of my delicious goat milk. Oh, man, I'll tell you what, there's nothing like goat milk. It is way better than cow milk. Way better. WAO. Come on, people. What is it? What does it mean? WAO. Let's put it in there. Work area outlet. Anthony, 10,000 points. Yes. You know, a lot of people get WAO, and TO confused. They do. And I understand why. Jim Parsons in the house. Hello, Jim. Excuse me. Jim says work area outlet as well. Let me turn off that graphic. Dang it, man. Design. Where's the graphic? Turn that graphic off. Yes, there we go. Let me explain that. The connector on the faceplate is called the telecommunications outlet, the TO. You can have, the standard says you're supposed to have two, but you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. That's called the TO. The faceplate with the connectors is called the work area outlet. The room or the area that it's in is called the work area. So a lot of people get those confused. So I want to make sure I could confuse them. Hold on. Goat milk break. Oh, man, I love goat milk. Yes. First question is from George Humphrey. And George wants to know, what is dark fiber? What is dark fiber? Dark fiber is like, think of it this way. Let's say that the customer wants to run a fiber optic backbone. And right now they know that, OM3 or OM4 will suffice. But the cost of putting in a backbone, let's say it's running between two buildings, right? And let's say that you got to trench a whole ground and put in pipe, all that stuff. A lot of money. So they want to build out for the future. Well, right now they don't have any single mode equipment. It doesn't have to be single mode. It could be anything. They don't have single mode. So what they'll do is they'll run two cables because it's just as easy to run two cables as one. but yet they won't terminate the unused the fiber, the future proof stuff. Sometimes it's single mode, sometimes it's multi mode, and that's referred to as dark fiber because it's not connected to anything. That's what dark fiber means. Yep, there you go. All right, so first question, and this question came in on Instagram, and it came from IT user, and I think IT user is kind of new to the industry, or maybe they're more IT than they are cabling. And their question is, Chuck, what is the difference between Cat 5e and Cat 6 cabling? Okay, so there are some differences. First, let's talk about the physical differences. Okay, the physical differences. So Cat 5e is generally smaller. Cat 5e is average outside diameter is 0.18. Cat 6 cable is a little bit bigger, not a lot bigger, but a little bit bigger. Cat 6 cable also has more twist per inch, and Cat 6 cable is generally going to be 23 gauge. Cat 5e cable is generally 24 gauge, which means it's small. I know it's kind of weird, right? The bigger the number, the smaller the conductor. That's the American wire gauge system. It refers to the number of times the copper gets pulled through a draw. The more times it gets pulled through the draw, the smaller it gets. As a matter of fact, every time it gets pulled through a draw, the outside dimension gets reduced by 20%. So Cat 6A cable is bigger and has more twist per inch. Now they both support up to 1 gigabit network, up to 295 feet. Cat 6 can support up to 10 gig, not the full 295 feet, but it can support 10 gig up to shorter distances. And that's why Cat 6 is really better suited for residential installs. Residential installs, they're not the easiest things to install, right? It's not like a commercial office building where you got drop tile ceilings. You got solid ceilings and all that other fun stuff. So again, if you're going to go through that whole process of putting cable, why not go with the next step up so that way you can grow into it, right? And another thing, some people will choose Cat 5e because it's cost effective. And there are some scenarios where Cat 5e cable is absolutely the perfect choice. Let's say, for example, you're doing some cameras. There's a great application for you. Cat 5e, they're only typically doing 100 meg, not a gig. Cat 5e cable's going to be good for that. And Cat 5e is going to be a very cost-effective choice. Again, it will be a decade or two before we start needing Cat 6 cable for cameras. And I'm not talking about the camera like for 4K on your computer stuff. I'm talking about like security cameras, stuff like that. And Cat 6 cable, because it has more twist per inch, it does have higher protection from crosstalk, right? And what does that mean? Because of the more twist per inch. The twist per inch reduces the effects of EMI, electromagnetic interference, right? And the beautiful thing about that is it's going to make that cable perform better. It truly is. And Cat 6 cable is not really that much more expensive, but it is a better performing cable, way better performing cable. Next question. This one comes from Henry, and Henry sent this to me via Instagram. He goes, how do I plan and design a structured cabling system? So this is a really hard one because are you doing it for a customer or are you doing it to say for your own network? I'm assuming because, I looked at his profile, they're not a professional cable. So I'm assuming they're doing it just for their home network. So first, it comes in 4 steps, right? First, assess your requirements. The second one is your floor plan. The third one is to select the type of cables. And the last one will be make sure you're compliant with the standards. So when you're talking about your assessment, what kind of network do you currently have? Is it just data? Is it voice and data? Is it just voice? Is it cable TV? Is it HDMI? Look at all that you're putting across, that you want to put across your network now. And that'll help you a long ways. Again, for residential install, the standard tells us we should start off with Cat 6 cable. I know some people will argue with me when I say that, if you have the ability, you have the skills, you have the money, why not do Cat 6A for your home? Again, running cable in a residential is a lot harder than an office. If you're going to do it, why not build the future into it? So once you understand what kind of network you're going to be running, all this stuff, next thing you know, you got to figure out, okay, what about if you do it, the floor plans? Should I put in a drop? Where should I put drops? I would say, again, put a drop everywhere you can. You'll find that you won't really know 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, you're like, one day if your wife is like my wife, she's constantly rearranging the house. In fact, this room that I'm in now, it's currently the podcast studio, not for much longer until I get the new one built out. I'm working on that. But this used to be a bedroom. This used to be a food storage room. It's been a lot of different things just in the last 9-10 years since we've lived here. So you really don't know. So the best thing is at least put one drop in every room. And usually the best place for the drop, not always, but usually the best place is the exact opposite from the door. Like the exact opposite of the wall from the door. If you have the ability, if it's an easy room, like if you got a house where you can crawl underneath of it, or you got a basement, why not do 2 per room? That's so easy to do it while you're doing it. If you have an attic, crawl up in the attic and do it. Then you have to identify where you're going to put all of your equipment. Please do not put your equipment in the attic. I still to this day cannot believe how many people argue with me over that one post I did a year ago when I said that the attic was not the best place to put an Ethernet switch. Wow. They still argue with me over that to this day. I still get people commenting to me that, right? The attic's not the best place. It's hotter up there. There's not enough good air circulation. There's a lot of dust. I'm not saying that if you put a cheap Netgear up there, it costs $30, whatever, and you're okay with buying a new switch every 6 months, who might argue with you? Do it. I don't care. But if I'm going to spend the money and do my wiring and put in some equipment, I'm going to make sure that I only have to do it once. Only do it once. Because you know what? Calculate the time you lose from putting a piece of equipment in because you put it in the wrong spot every time. So speaking in a house, okay, the attic, not a good place. Depending on the area of the country, the basement may also not be a good place because the basement can have a lot of humidity. You want some place that's going to have a stable temperature. It's going to be easy to access. Maybe so it's not out in the middle where everybody, well, unless you're me. If my wife would let me do it, I would put a network switch and a cabinet mounted on the wall right there in the living room. So people, when they come in my house and sit down, they can see the cabinet with all the cable and stuff because I think that's cool. She doesn't. She doesn't. Imagine that. Doesn't imagine that. So try to pick a place where the temperature's stable and you get some good ventilation. All right. Some good ventilation because again, that equipment's going to be kicking off heat and you need to get that heat out of there and exchange it. Once you got that done, now you got to really just kind of sit down and think, okay, showpiece it with LED lights. Oh, absolutely. I bought some LED lights. Yes, I'm so excited. I wanted to work on a podcast last weekend. Dang it, I didn't get to it because we had some farm projects we need to get done. And then this weekend, I'm actually traveling to Atlanta tomorrow. Atlanta. If you're in the Marietta area, come see me. I'm going to be at the Advantage Electronics open house from noon to 3. And I will have stickers, lots of stickers. So now that you got that, you got to figure, okay, you know what kind of network you have, what kind you can put across it. And you're thinking about the future, as my good friend, the Beard of Knowledge says, thinking about the future. That's even more critical in houses. Select the cable. And again, I'd be willing to bet you 90% of the time, 95% of the time, Beard of Knowledge, let me know if I'm wrong. Cat 6 is going to be fine. Unless you're doing something that just you're doing some huge file transfers, or you're doing digital gaming, or something that just really just needs a lot of bandwidth, Cat 6 cable is going to be fine. When you put it in, though, make sure that you do follow the standards, the 568 standards, the 11801 standards. Also, make sure you follow the standards for residentialing, the 570 standards. Next question. This one came to me from LinkedIn from Gerard. What are some warning signs of cabling project issues? What are some warning signs? Some cabling project issues. Now, he's asking me from the point of a customer. This is not actually a contractor. And I know that because I went and looked at his LinkedIn profile. So the first thing I would always be concerned with if I was a customer and I had submitted out pricing, be very cautious of low bids. I was interviewing Rich Hinkles for next, that Hinkles of Hinkles McCoy, Rich Hinkles. He's going to be on the show next Monday. We recorded last night, and we got to talking. And I used to be an estimator for Hinkles McCoy many, many years ago. And I said in the interview, I told him, I said, look, it's not uncommon when a customer would get 5 bids. One bid would be extremely too high. Another bid would be extremely too low. And then the other 3 would be all within 5 or 10 points of each other. Customers, because they tend to be cost conscious, will go right straight to that low bid. That should be a major red flag. Major red flag. Because that should tell you that contractor, I'm not saying that contractor is bad. That contractor missed something. There have been times when I've been an estimator and I've estimated projects and I was the lowest bid. Thank God my bid got rejected because it was a low bid. Because when I went back and did my post evaluation and looked at it, it's like, oh my God, I forgot to put this in. That would have been a nightmare if we'd have been awarded that project. Unfortunately, there are some customers out there that will bank on that. They know that you missed something. And they know that their request for proposal is so lock-solid, legally sound that they'll award you the project knowing they're going to get it for free. And they're not going to negotiate with you because they're going to say, wait a minute. Our RFP said this. You bid on it. Sorry, you got to put it in. Do you really want a customer like that? But again, we're talking about from the customer perspective. So yeah, low bid, consider they missed something. Doesn't mean they're low quality. It just means they missed something. It could mean they're low quality, but most likely meant they missed something. And don't pick the highest expensive one either, because I don't know. They went to lunch. Also, make sure that as a customer in your request for proposal that somewhere you stipulate that they use certifiers to do the project, not qualifiers, not verifiers, a certifier. And make sure, also put in that stipulation that 2 things. 1, they have some kind of a testing plan. And the testing plan means how often they're going to send a cable to tester to get calibrated, what kind of training programs do they have, that whole kind of plan of thing. And then also make sure that they have it's been certified by the company. There is, some of the testers out there, you're supposed to calibrate your certifiers every year. And there are some testers out there that those manufacturers don't certify their testers anymore. They want you to buy the new testers. So there are some companies out there that will third-party calibrate your testers. I think if my network was critical to me, meaning if something went down, there was a huge life safety issue or financial impact, I think that I would spec in my RFP, request for proposal, or RFQ, request for quote, that the testers have to be calibrated by the manufacturer. That tells me right away that they're going to have a newer tester and it's going to be done right. Right? Just keep it fun. Next question. Question number 4. And this one comes from, I can't remember. I didn't write the name down this one. Oops. This one came to me via TikTok. It says, how frequently should cabling be replaced? How frequently should cabling be replaced? Well, That's a great question because the average lifespan of a structured cable plant is 7 to 10 years. That doesn't mean the cable goes bad. That just means that there's some new computer, some new software that needs that extra bandwidth. But you know what? There's also the cable out there that was installed 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Is working just fine. If you're just doing something simple like analog, like for a fax machine or a credit card processing machine, that you'll never have to replace that cable. But if it's connected to a network that's going to be transmitting data, and you know that you're going to be upgrading your technology because of Moore's law, you know, there's always some new, faster, better thing coming out, then you can expect that cable plant probably have to be replaced in about 10 years. Because what will happen is some new computer, some new processor will come out that's going to need to operate at a higher bandwidth that your traditional cable can handle. So the true answer is it depends on the equipment. And also, and that's what I said earlier, future proof. Select the cable that you think you need for that network, and then go to the next one above it. Why not bank it? Because it's easy. I'm gonna tell you right now. Labor to install cable today, I guarantee this. Labor to install cable today is going to be cheaper than labor to install cable 10 years from today. I guarantee you. So why not go to the next level up? Because they're backwards compatible. It'll work with those lower networks. But yet in 10 years, you're not going to have to pay somebody to come back to remove that cable and put in new cable. It's money in the bank. Absolutely money in the bank. And maybe consider, George asked about this earlier, dark fiber. If you're running a backbone cable, let's say a copper cable between your network interface device, your demarcation point to your server room, and right now you only need copper, why not run a fiber with it? Just buy the fiber. You don't have to terminate it today. Just run it. And then a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, when you have that bandwidth, then terminate that fiber and fire it up. And you didn't have to pay anything for it other than termination and testing because it was already installed during the previous install. Isn't that simple? I don't understand why some people just make this so difficult. They make it way more difficult than it needs to be. Question number 5. This one comes from Roger. And Roger wants to know, what is the role of horizontal cabling? So now we're getting into the world of structured cabling now. So there's 3 subsystems. Subsystem 1, subsystem 2, subsystem 3. Subsystem 1 is the cable that goes from that work area outlet. That's why today's acronym was WAO. The cable goes from that faceplate on the wall, the work area outlet, to the telecom room. Actually, technically, it goes to the horizontal cross connect in the telecom room. That's the horizontal cable. It's called horizontal cable because generally speaking, it runs horizontally, but it doesn't always run horizontally. We've called it horizontal cable ever since I've been in this industry. So what does it do? It's connecting individual workstations, right? Computers, printers, scanners, back to the network. Again, the maximum length for that cable is 295 feet, not counting the patch cords. And 295 feet will be way more than enough for 90% of your office installs and stuff like that. Way more than enough. And it's going to support everything from your voice, your data, and all this stuff. And that horizontal cabling, it can be Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 6a, Cat 8. It can be single mode fiber. It can be multi-mode fiber. It can even be coax in residential installs. Coax is actually a really good cable. It has a lot of bandwidth to it. A lot of bandwidth. A lot of people don't realize that. They automatically dismiss it because it was cable TV. It's old. It's old stuff. Yeah, that's not that bad. This question comes from Shannon, and this came to me via Instagram. He says, why is backbone cabling critical? See, so I picked a lot of these questions this week because they kind of go back to the basics. So you have 2 types of backbone cable: interbuilding backbone cable an intra-building backbone cable. And they link either buildings together or floors together. And what that does is it allows the network to extend to other floors or other buildings, sometimes even other campuses. And what that does is it condenses all of the network traffic. It's going to handle all that heavy network traffic and make those connections between those floors. And that's how we get our signal back from the 10th floor back to the data center on the first floor, or to the data center on the first floor of another building. Again, that backbone cabling, that can be copper cabling, could be fiber optic cabling. As a matter of fact, with backbone cabling, you might even find, if it's just for voice, you might even find that it's Cat3 cable. Cat3 cable. Question number 7. And this one comes from Fred, and it came from email. What happens at the entrance facility? The entrance facility. That acronym is EF. So the entrance facility is where the outside plant cable comes into the building. Sometimes that outside plant cable is customer owned, meaning they're connecting it between their own buildings. Sometimes it means it's this service provider cable. So that's going to come into the building at that entrance facility. And generally speaking, you will find the entrance facility on the first floor or first subterranean floor of the building, and usually near an exterior wall because of the 50-foot rule. Because you see, outside plant cabling can't typically exceed 50 feet once it comes into the building because it's not a listed cable. So at that service provider entrance, that entrance facility, you're going to find things like the primary bonding bus bar. That's the bus bar that you're going to ground the outside plant cable coming into, the lightning protection to it, the telecommunications bonding conductor. It's going to be all tied to that. At that entrance facility, you might find things like splice cases, where you might find a cable coming in and 2 cables going out. One cable goes back out the building, the other comes back down to your entrance facility. So you find splice case. You might find supports. You also will find a bunch of other stuff as well too. I mean, depending on the application and the type of building it is, you might find other people's entrance facility stuff, which is kind of cool. And you got to make sure that the lightning protection is there as well. Lightning protection. Okay. Question number 8. This comes from Frank, and this came to me via email. And he said, the telecommunications room, can you tell me what that is? The telecommunications room, it's floor serving or portion of floor serving. Most of the time it's going to be floor serving because it can serve up to, depending on the size of the room, if it's a 10 by 10 room, it can serve up to 10,000 square feet. And that's a huge amount of floor space. Inside the telecom room, you're going to find multiple horizontal cross connects. You're going to find one for the voice, one for the data, maybe one for the access control. Okay. The typically speaking, the data, the horizontal cross connect is going to be patch panels. Typically speaking, for the voice, the horizontal cross connect will be 66 blocks, 110 blocks, BIX blocks, maybe even an old Chrono block. Right? And there are some things you need to know about that telecommunications room. If you're building one out, that you need to make sure. Number one, the door should swing outward. Number two, you have to have enough light. You have to have 500 lumens measured at 18 inches above finished floor. The wall should be painted in a light color because that helps reflect the light. And the reason for that is because when you get in some of the cables, I don't have one here, but some of the AT&T Plenum rated backbone cables, the orange and the browns are extremely hard to tell apart in low light scenarios. You need to have enough air conditioning. You got to circulate the air minimum 4 times per hour because, again, active equipment generates heat that causes problems. Get that heat out of there. And it should not be connected to the HVAC system of the building. It should be its own independent system. That way, if the building HVAC system goes down, the telecom room still has its own system and it can stay up and running. Because a lot of times, if you got security running through there, you want that security system still running, even though the building is shut down. Well, if the building shut down because the HVAC system shut down and your telecom room is also on that main HVAC system, what's going to happen is eventually that equipment's going to shut down because it's going to overheat. And now your security's gone out the window. So it should have its own HVAC system. Other things should not penetrate and go through the room unless they're directly related to the operation of that room. So HVAC ductwork, sprinkler pipes, they shouldn't go through that room unless they're directly related to that equipment. Now, you will find sprinkler pipes in telecom rooms because quite often they'll put the sprinkler heads in those rooms. Just make sure that the sprinkler heads aren't directly over top of your racks or your equipment, because sometimes those sprinkler heads fail. And if they fail, that means a lot of water is going to get dumped on your equipment. So stay away from that. Stay away from that. All righty. That was the last question I have for tonight. We are at 6:30 already, 30 minutes. Oh, I didn't check my questions over here. You could always ask for the tenure. Oh, absolutely. That's a great point, Jim. Great point. A lot of times when you're submitting bids, he's talking about selecting contractors. You can ask, what kind of certifications does your people have, and how many years of experience, and make sure that you specifically ask for the people who are going to be assigned to your project. That's okay as a customer. That is okay to require that. It is absolutely okay to require that, because when you enter into a relationship with a customer, it's a relationship. There's got to be mutual benefit to both sides. You got to be able to make money off of it, and the customer's got to be able to get a good, nice working network out of it too, without breaking the bank. There you go. All righty, everybody. That's our 30 minutes. I appreciate everybody being here today. Until next time, remember, knowledge is power.